And my goodness, Colin, you're right. The week has flown by, and today's the event. How cool is that?
Let's go, little party.
Yeah. So happy halving day, everyone. And it's nice to get a little bounce today on the halving day. But I want to just talk about, Bitcoin. You really can't view Bitcoin in a vacuum anymore. Bitcoin is a risk asset, and this is becoming a more globally accepted, adopted risk asset. And as such, it reacts to geopolitical events. And so, last night, there was news of, an altercation in the Middle East, Iran and Israel, another exchange of missiles or something like that. And so I just wanted to highlight, how assets can respond to geopolitical events is important to watch. But, I think that we also need to see how is Bitcoin performing, compared to other assets that we track, because Bitcoin is a risk asset at the end of the day. And so that's why I threw the S&P 500 futures up here first, because the S&P has been correcting ever since the news of, those first couple of strikes between Iran, Israel, Hezbollah, all that. And so it's not just that. It's not just the geopolitical uncertainty. And one could be the case that uncertainty has nothing to do with it, and that it's about pricing out of rate cuts. The beginning of this year, in December, and the market price in rate cuts. Why is it so important? A function of global liquidity. The Fed cutting rates and starting to telegraph late last year, in 2024, we're going to cut rates, and the plotted we'll cut rates 6 times. The American stock market, which is critically important, started to price in 6, even 7 rate cuts. So now we've seen the rates get priced out. But this is so important to understand, because the psychology of this is like ridiculously simple. It's basically like this. It's war bad. So talking about the Middle East, right? War bad, no rate cuts bad, but economy go down good, because that means rate cuts. So this is the psychology here. War bad, but war means rate cuts, so war good. Like that's the way that this works, okay? It's really that simple. And we have to watch the S&P, but we should also be watching, indicators, proxies for inflation. So stuff like energy. And as we saw, crude pop last night, I was watching Bitcoin, and Bitcoin dumped and pumped. Such an interesting reaction, right down to this support level. This is a great support zone to be picking up some BTC between 59K and 61K. Really nice bounce from that level. And, today, with the halving event occurring today at block, I think it's at every 210,000 blocks, what we're going to see is effectively the inflation rate of Bitcoin get cut in half. And, this is a very important event, because today, after today, there will not be 900 Bitcoin mined per day. After today, there will be 450 Bitcoin mined per day. And there's, no extra marginal supply. The supply of Bitcoin is inelastic. That's an important word to know. That's an economic word. So this is an inelastic supply. And when we're watching net flows, all we have to see for these ETFs, these Bitcoin ETFs, which are the new, marginal buyers, and in the case of GBTC, the only marginal seller. But when we see these net flows finally start to tick positive again and break out from this downtrend, well, I think that's going to signal an epic rally, the start of an epic rally. And I think that we're very close to that. So I'm just watching, and we've been doing this every single week. We're watching net flows in these Bitcoin ETFs. Month to date, we've been trending lower, but I think that as soon as we break out here, we're going to see a massive rally. And the only seller of any size of consequence right now is GBTC. But notice even the outflows from GBTC have been slowly drying up. So who's buying? Well, we've been talking about this for the last several weeks, but we've been, bringing this back up because it's so critically important. And that is, iBit, BlackRock's ETF, even as the price in US dollars of Bitcoin is correcting, iBit continues to buy. And so you can see their on-chain holdings continue to go up and to the right. So they're not selling, and neither should you. This is a buy zone down here. Bitcoin is sitting just above its buy zone. This is not the zone where you panic and sell. This is where you add to your position. And remember what we were talking about in the first couple of seconds of today's call. We're laying the foundation now for the rewards that we're going to reap 12 months from now. And, we're also buying altcoins, and we're providing liquidity in these altcoins. And so we need to have a gauge of when alt season is going to arrive. And the gauge that I'm using here is Bitcoin dominance. I'm always watching Bitcoin dominance. And for weeks, if not, several months, we were saying, hey, Bitcoin dominance is going to break higher. And it did. And so last Friday, actually, it popped higher and touched my target here. Notice that this level was support. It was broken, which made it resistance. And last Friday, Bitcoin dominance moved up towards this resistance level and was rejected by it. So this is my target area. I think there might be a little bit more room for Bitcoin dominance to run to the upside here. But, Bitcoin dominance, when you see Bitcoin dominance move to the downside like this, like we saw in 2021, that signals the beginning of alt season. So as Bitcoin dominance is moving higher, what we're witnessing is all of our favorite altcoins bleeding back into Bitcoin. We're watching the Satoshi valuation of our altcoins, for the most part, decline. Now, that doesn't mean that their US dollar valuations are all declining. I mean, look, everything's correcting right now, so everything is declining against its US dollar pairs. But when we start to see Bitcoin dominance break down, that's the signal that, hey, it's time for a big altcoin run. And that's when we're going to get, like Raul Paul says, I like this, the banana zone, where things go bananas. I really like that little saying. But this week, a couple of relative outperformers that I want to highlight. And, we've been talking about AERO over and over again, but for good cause. We want to highlight the very best opportunities. And right now, everything on base is just hot, 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 because Coinbase has 110 million users, and they're working to actively implement a smart wallet strategy where there is account abstraction, so they can funnel their users from the Coinbase centralized exchange into the Coinbase smart wallet and the world of Web3 and DeFi. And so we're seeing that the major beneficiary of that has been AERODROME, the largest DEX on the base chain, which, by the way, also received investment from Coinbase Ventures early last month. So AERO, its native DEX token, is performing extremely well. And I think that there is more room for AERO to run to the upside. Also, I want to have a look at BNB just because it has been such a strong performer as we've corrected. BNB has held its own, in fact, even better than Bitcoin. And we'll see that in a couple of minutes here. But for this next week, I just want to highlight some of the top pools.